or no, it might be in my book, Make Yourself at Home. I think it's in that book, in the appendix, this little test where you rate yourself and you also rate your spouse. And then you put a third rating on what number between 1 and 10 you think your spouse is going to give you. That's a nice little way to play this game also. So you could do that if you want. Say, how happy am I between 1 and 10, where 10 is really, I'm super happy. And I manage my stress well. You know, I do things like I exercise and I sleep and I have friends and I have passion for my hobbies and my work. And, you know, I keep myself through my efforts in a good spot, right? And I would give myself a 9 out of 10. And I'd give my spouse a 2 out of 10. And I think my spouse would give me a 10 out of 10, right? And then you take the test up with your spouse a little bit later and you see what you actually gave each other and why. You could discuss it, right? Anger management goes into this as well. You know, it's very hard to have a great marriage with somebody who has not learned to manage their frustration. A lot of children don't know how to manage their frustration. They just let it all hang out, you know, or I'm mad, so I scream, I yell, I say bad things about you, and I, you know, bad things about the marriage and whatever, you know, but I don't really mean it, right? So these kinds of things scar the marriage, right? Whether you mean it or don't mean it, when you say things, they can destroy the foundation of your marriage. You know, there's a little marriage rule in the fair fighting department that we never, ever talk about divorce. Okay? Like divorce is when you've already gone to the lawyer, and there are times Judaism allows for divorce, very rare, not for every, you know, struggling marriage, because that would have to be every marriage. Marriage is struggle, just like we all struggle to be in a good space and to live our best life. It's a struggle. We're not naturally doing all that stuff. We have to work at it. We have to learn a bunch of strategies. So along the way in marriage, we may sometimes feel, oh, I married the wrong person. If only I'd married somebody else. Maybe I will marry somebody else, you know. And when we're having a fight over who's going to wash the dishes, the fight can veer off into, I should never have married you. Okay. Or, you know what, I don't want to be married to a person who can't wash a simple dish. And we talk like that out of our poorly managed anger, our poorly managed mouth. Okay, we just say things. You know, there's a big mitzvah in the Torah to not hurt people's feelings with words. It's just right there in the Torah. It's a direct mitzvah. It's not hidden. I think it's Vayikra 17:24 perhaps, or it's 24:17. We tend to reverse my numbers. I'm sure the rabbi can enlighten us later. But we're not supposed to hurt people's feelings with words. So that requires tremendous self-control. And when we're really upset because we're tired and our spouse isn't washing dishes or whatever, you know, is not helping us, and what, you know, the normal things that people aggravate each other about. If we don't know how to speak properly during those times or handle ourselves properly, we can cause permanent damage to our marriage. So I'm saying we never mention divorce. We don't say, I'm sorry I ever married you. We never should have gotten married. You know, you're just a slob. I'm sorry I married a slob. Or you know, if you keep this up, you know, I'm out of here. That kind of stuff. I'm giving you examples, but drop them out of your mind immediately and never use them. Okay, so I don't want to give you any more. I think you get the idea. We don't talk about the marriage. We talk about the issues. We talk about the dishes and who's going to wash them, who's the division of labor, the spending of money, the raising of children, the in-laws, the mood problem. You know, we talk about a lot of things, but we do not talk about the relationship when we're in the middle of talking about those other things. The only time would be when you're, heaven forbid, seriously on your way to divorce, when you have to talk about it because you have to go see your lawyer. That's the only time. Okay. So, but anger management is more than, you know, those kinds of things. Anger management is our tendency to raise our voice. Because even if we just raise our voice and don't say anything nasty, we just say like, I am sick of this. Okay. We're just you know, speaking too loudly. We're scaring our partners, and we're bringing anger into the house. It's like a fire, can burn the house down. So somebody with no real good anger management skills is going to have a problem in the marriage. Well, rate your anger management skills between 1 and 10. Okay, just say like, you know, where 10 is, I am in control of my mouth and my behavior when I'm mad, and I'm very careful not to hurt anybody through acting out or turning away, okay, turning in. So those of us who, yeah, we don't scream, but we just stop talking for a couple of days, or, way too long. I mean, not talking for an hour or two while you collect yourself is acceptable, let's say, as long as you come back and say, okay, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling ready to discuss what just happened, right? But not talking for days, or some people could do it weeks, or I've met some people who've done it months. That's just as bad as screaming and swearing and all those other things. So if you're doing that, don't give yourself a 10 out of 10 just because you didn't say anything insulting, okay? Communication skills are really, really important. So we have to know how to talk, and we have to talk about the issues. So rate yourself between 1 and 10. If you think you're doing really well, give yourself a 10, or 8, 9, 10. If you think your spouse is doing really well, same thing, and so on. And write down what you think your spouse is going to give you. Right? Now, the courtship behavior I was talking about is about how much attention we give our partner. Remember, your partner signed up for life with you. What did you do? How wonderful were you? I'm sure your mood was pretty good. You weren't a whiner complainer. Who would want to go out with you even for 2 dates if you were? You probably dressed up really nice. And this thing of keeping up standards of attraction. Well, okay, you might be 20 years into it now, or 30 years into it now. But if you think that keeping up attractive standards is not important, you're very, very wrong. In the secular world, the divorce rate, of course, is very high. It's still around 60% in the cities, and the other 40% of people are not happily married. Okay? And they say something between, I've read statistics ranging from 66 to 92% of that other 40%, that the married people are having extramarital relationships. Okay, so they're looking for somebody to find them attractive. Okay, that's really what goes on. Like they want somebody to look at them and see the brilliant, funny, attractive person that you married. All right, if you're not seeing it anymore, if you're not the one who's seeing it, then the person will look for somebody else to see it. Right. So that's how that goes. You need to always maintain what made you so desirable in the first place. Okay, so you can't get sloppy with that. Rate yourself between 1 and 10. Say, like, how am I doing with staying beautiful? Not just theoretically so, but being attractive and a nice clean fellow. Like some people stop taking baths once they get married. Like some guys don't ever take showers. Some people just wear track suits around the house all the time that are not really the latest and greatest even track suits. They're just whatever. The people at the office, when there used to be an office, would dress up more for your partner than you do. That men and women seek outside affirmation that they're still attractive people. So you give your spouse that affirmation. Nobody else needs to, right? And you be that attractive partner that your spouse is like crazy for, just like that your spouse was crazy for at the beginning. Rate yourself between 1 and 10 on your standards. Being fair and reasonable is very important. It's not so much a courtship behavior as just being a decent person, not leaving things to your spouse to clean up your mess, your financial mess, your physical mess that you leave around the house. Your partner didn't say, yeah, I want to marry you because I want to follow you around and fix all your big financial mistakes, or clean up your dirty socks all the time. That's really what I'm looking forward to. That's not what they wanted. Okay. So like when we help each other, okay, and in the courtship version of that, it's kind of chivalrous. Like, honey, you look tired. Why don't you lie down? I'm going to put the kids to bed tonight. You just take a break, okay? You look like you need some rest. Being taken care of, taking care of your partner, being helpful, doing your own responsibilities, dividing that labor down the middle, okay? Especially now when we are, again, we're at our wits' end. We're exhausted, all of us, with childcare, house care. A lot of us gave up nannies some point along this year with COVID, took on, more responsibility in terms of being, again, at home, cleaning up the house, cooking 10 times a day, it feels like. It just seems like a lot of hard work. If you care about your partner, you don't let your partner do that work by him or herself. You step up and you share. Just to rate yourself between 1 and 10 about how good you think you are at sharing. Are you doing 50% of what needs to be done on every level? Okay. Child care, financial responsibility, that is chipping in and contributing, and um, household management, cooking, cleaning, shopping, putting things away. How is that all happening? Now, I know some of you may have hired help to do a lot of it, but particularly where any of it falls on you, let's make sure that the division of labor there feels fair. Rate yourself on how fair you think you are between 1 and 10, where 10 is I'm really fair, okay? And rate your spouse and write down what you think your spouse is going to rate you. Now, related to that was financial responsibility as a separate category, right? So marriage is for grown-ups. And, you want to make sure that you know about your financial situation, how much money you have, what your budget is. Do you have a budget? The other person is not your parent. You are not a little girl or a little boy. You want to be full adult partners who respect each other and can respect each other's judgment, who can talk about money, who know how much you have, who don't gamble it all away, don't overspend, don't underspend. Okay. So, take a look at yourself and say, do I know what our financial situation is? Do I know where all our money is? Because if you're an adult, you should know that, right? And, am I managing my credit card properly? Or am I in debt? Are you in a lot of debt? Are you overspending? Are you, like I said, gambling? Subtract points for all of that. Give yourself a rating between 1 and 10, and your spouse, and what you think your spouse thinks of you. The ability to attend to your partner, we said, was a courtship behavior. So that includes listening. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more in the communication skills section, which we'll do very shortly. We'll do that soon. But anyways, the ability to spend time, quality time, set aside time, listen, not be on the phone listening. Yeah, but actually, eye contact, just spending playtime. Now, this can be hard also. We did get some questions about, how do we do anything? We can't go out. There's nothing. Everything's closed. Like some places, like where I live, there's a major lockdown here. And the big outing would be to the drugstore or the supermarket. So that's about it. Not much fun going on outside the home. So how do people maintain that special friendship, especially in marriage where there's so many responsibilities? It can become just like work drudgery. We have to clean, we have to cook, we have to put the kids to bed, we have to start again tomorrow, we have to do it again tomorrow, we have to fight about who's not sharing the tasks properly. Oh gosh, that's not fun. You didn't get married to just do the chores of marriage. You wanted a relationship. You wanted a partner who cared, who gave you attention, who played, gave you diversion, and who lifted your spirits, who you laughed with, right? So are you still laughing? Because that's very important, very, very important to have fun and to have that date night, okay? So making time to talk for just a few minutes each day, a few minutes where the children aren't allowed to interrupt, making that time maybe once a week still in your house, again, where the children are told, Mommy and Daddy are busy now, okay? And where you go do something else, unless you have a baby in your arms who's, what can do about that. But I mean, there needs to be a time that you're willing to set aside to keep the friendship of marriage going, because without it, again, it's not really a marriage. From the Torah point of view, marriage is companionship. It's a form of love, a loving relationship, a friendship with benefits. So you have to make time for those benefits and for the friendship. Okay, so you can rate yourself. Am I available to my spouse? Or is there always a phone in my hand? Am I always working? Am I always too busy? Am I always too tired? On every level, that date night, the few minutes during the day where you're actually talking to each other, that intimate time, all of that. How are you doing at showing up for the marriage part of the marriage? And rate yourself, your spouse, and what you think your spouse will rate you. Those are some of the kinds of categories. There's more. There's the self-care. I'll just add that self-care one. It's not exactly the stress management thing we were talking about. Self-care is keeping yourself healthy and alive for your partner. So, some of our activities have been limited, so maybe we're not doing as many reckless things as we were doing before because we can't. But, a person who drinks too much, takes, drugs, or does very dangerous sports or dangerous activities, has dangerous habits, smokes cigarettes perhaps, or maybe even vapes, or I don't know, like doesn't eat well, doesn't ever exercise. These things might put you at risk for a shorter life, which means abandoning your partner, and actually can make your partner very upset that if you don't take care of yourself, it's a form of abandonment when you're married, okay? If it's just yourself, you're a single person, you want to do yourself in, go for it, but not really, because there's a Torah mitzvah to guard your body. So you're not really supposed to do yourself in even then. But, we want to take care of ourselves for our spouse, all right? All right, now we're going to just move off into some communication skills. And I wonder if this moves spotlight. Oops, sorry. I'm sorry. I pushed a button there. You can push back on. I'm going to put that button on and change something. It's like there was a glare. I'm sorry. I'll leave it to you to put it back on again. So, okay, communication skills. We want to follow something that I call the 95-5 rule in marriage. Some of you who've read my materials over the years might have come across the 80-20 rule in parenting, or the 90-10 rule for teenagers. This rule refers to the ratio of good feeling communication to not great feeling communication. And in the good feeling communication, we want to have things like our joking around, our smiles, our acts of kindness, our gifts that we give to well, I'm going to talk about marriage. So, our unsolicited help that we offer. Yes, the chocolates and flowers and, little magazines and books and whatever that we might bring for our spouse, or the birthday gifts or whatever other kinds of gifts, the listening, the physical affection, all those things that say, you're special, I love you, all those things that feel good to receive as a human being. And we would like 95% of our communication to consist of those things. So showing interest. Good morning, honey. How was your sleep? And then listening when the person says, oh, I had so many nightmares. Really? What happened? What about? So listening, being interested, showing interest, all those things that make us feel seen and loved and cared about. And we've spoken about a lot of them already in rating ourselves also. The 5% is for negative feedback, which we're going to have to give to each other. Okay, so we will be frustrated, criticisms, complaints, corrections, and instructions. Okay, of the 5%, we want about 80% of that to be just the plain instructions. Honey, would you please, take care of the baby, or could you do this, or could you, whatever, when you're asking a spouse to do something, it's an interruption of what they were doing. This is the same thing in parenting. So if we're just sitting staring at the ceiling and somebody says, oh, would you mind stirring the eggs? It may be your pleasure to stir the eggs, but you were just staring at the ceiling and maybe you don't want to be interrupted. So, or maybe you were studying, or maybe you're in the middle of trying to figure out a difficult thing on your accounting or whatever, so all instructions are considered to be in the 5%. But, any show of irritation, any show of anger, complaints you make even about other people are kind of sour notes in our communication. So we have to do some of this. We have to express our displeasure. But we're going to do so, we're going to learn in a minute or two how we can do that in a way which minimizes the harm. Because in that 5%, we've already spoken about some of the things that can really unravel a marriage. So in the 5%, for example, would be any form of displeasure. So let's say you left something in the hallway and your spouse tripped over it. Okay, anybody could do this. Kids do it. We do it. We left the bag of groceries in the hallway. Spouse comes in carrying who knows what and trips over your bag of groceries or the piece, I don't know, the thing you brought home from the hardware store, whatever. It's in the hallway and somebody tripped on it, right? So how we express our upset will determine just how negative experience that is. Okay, so if it's a quiet, like, honey, I'd really appreciate it if you would just anticipate people walking in the front door and move that stuff. It would really, I would really appreciate that because I just stubbed my toe on this box or bag or whatever it is. Okay, so that's going to knock out about 20 of the positive things you put in, because negative feedback just has a way of doing that. But if it's like, what, and you're swearing and you're yelling and you're throwing things around, like just killing the door, you leave the stuff here all the time, that same thing is one in your 5%, but the amount of damage it does is much higher. So this goes back to our anger management question and how good we are at communicating. So in order to minimize the harm that we need to do when we are communicating, it's so important to communicate. You don't want to swallow your frustration after you kick your toe and hurt it just because your spouse wasn't thinking. You do want to be able to communicate whatever you need to communicate. There's a little formula that works really well for that Dr. Harville Hendricks put out. Keeps it short because in that 5%, we don't have any room for lectures and speeches and ranting and raving. We don't have any room for that. It does too much damage. So, but we do need to express our dissatisfaction. So that little formula goes, when you do X, then I feel Y. And what I really would like is if you would do Z instead. That's the whole formula. Z is the Canadian way, so it only works in Canada. But you could say Z. Okay. So when you do X, when you do X, when you leave stuff blocking the front doorway, I feel neglected. Okay. And what I would really appreciate is if you would anticipate me coming home at 5 o'clock like I do every single day and keep the hallway clear. That's how we raise an issue, okay? Then that's a very small issue. Hopefully you're not getting your toe stubbed too many times. But, if your spouse didn't say something to you very nicely or used sarcasm in front of the children or in front of guests or who knows what, when you make a sarcastic remark to me in front of other people, I feel diminished and uncared for. And I'd really appreciate it if you would speak to me respectfully at all times, but especially when other people are around. Okay? It's never longer than that. Practice that little technique. When you do X, I feel Y. And what I really want is for you to do Z instead. All right? That's how it goes. Now, the other part, maybe the biggest part of communication is listening. So a lot of times we do end up ranting and going on way too long because we don't feel like anybody's heard us. And so we keep trying to explain with 100 examples what we mean from the first year of marriage all the way to this, 30 years later this afternoon, what went wrong. And we get very dramatic because we feel unheard. But if the person had some good listening skills, then we wouldn't feel so unheard. So listening skills are really, really important in marriage. And the simplest listening skill is just stopping what you're doing and listening. Don't talk. Keep your mouth shut. Don't interrupt your partner and just let your partner speak. Hopefully your partner is using the Harville Hendricks formula we just learned, so it's going to be short. But anyways, when they're finished speaking, then you just repeat what they said to make sure that you heard it correctly. So it would sound like, so what you're saying is you want me to remember that you're coming home at 5, which you do every single day, and have the front hallway clear so you don't trip over anything when you come in. Is that it? And then the speaker would go, yeah, that's it. That's it exactly. And after you've heard it, if you want, some issues lend themselves to a deeper kind of listening. That one was pretty simple, straightforward, right? But if there was an emotional level to it or something was much more important, you might go on to step 2 and 3 of this, again from Harville Hendricks. Step 2 is validation. It's the opposite of discounting, which we like to do. Validation says, well, that makes sense because You want to walk in the door safely, I mean, that just makes perfect sense. Or let's say the complaint was, honey, I at the end of a meal, you get up and leave stuff for me to clean up, and you go off and do stuff. Like, when you do that, I feel like mistreated, actually, disrespected. And what I really want you to do is join me in getting all the stuff off the table so the kids can do their homework. Let's say that's what you said. And the person who's listening says, okay, so you want me to hang around and clean up with you, correct? I say, yes. And then maybe we go on to validation from there. So, well, I understand why you're saying that. I mean, you don't want to do everything by yourself, right? Right? Okay. And now it feels like a fuller experience of being heard. It really feels like we're connecting. And then finally, sometimes it'll be appropriate to add emotions, doing something we call emotional coaching. And I guess you felt, like I was just abandoning you and neglecting you and not treating you very nicely by just getting up and walking off. Yes, exactly. And that full package of listening, where you repeated the words, you validated by saying what you're saying makes sense and explaining why it makes sense. And then naming what your inner experience must have been like. That is like a super duper therapeutic listening type of thing that you can do for your spouse for free, where people have to pay hundreds of dollars to get that listened to normally by, professional listeners. So, it's very, very healing to do a good job of listening. And you can, again, rate yourself between 1 and 10 and just say, like, how well do I stop and listen to my spouse? Do I cut my partner off? Do I do yes, but you do the same thing to me? There's a very destructive marital game called counterattack, where we never get anywhere in solving any marital problems, because when our partner raises a problem, it's kind of like throwing a little ball at us, and we catch the ball and throw it back at them. We never hold the ball. So, they say to us, you get up and leave the table, leave everything for me to do. And instead of listening like we just did, the person says, okay, but you leave me to do all the banking stuff every week, so what's the difference? Okay, so that's called counterattack. That's where you also do things that are wrong. So if that's the game we play in marriage, where we never accept the person telling us anything because they're also imperfect. So don't tell me anything until you're a perfect person. In fact, I can show you the ways in which you're imperfect. You do exactly the same thing I do. Or if you don't do exactly the same thing I do, you do something else. You also do something wrong, So that is a very destructive communication technique that causes people to give up eventually, stop trying to make progress in their marriage because they're never heard. These are the things that come up over and over again in marriage counseling. It's like, and the cure for it is listening and accepting. And I'm giving you the fastest, most speediest rundown. We can go into that counterattack a little more deeply. But I want to pause here for the questions that you have, because when we run out of questions, I'll come back to the counterattack if we have some time to do it. We'll go into it more deeply. Okay. Shall we take some questions?
Yes. Well, thank you so much so far. That's been a wonderful crunching of a massive amount of beautiful ideas. And my question as I'm going through and rating myself is, what do you do when your ratings are really low?
So,
I don't mean that literally, but I do mean that just the idea of sitting back and trying to tap into those courtship moments all the way back when, and the notion of giving yourself a rating system of just figuring out what areas you need to work on, that's already beneficial. So thank you for that, and for the recent section here on communication. We have some of the specific questions here, and I'd be happy for you to continue on some of the things you've been speaking about communication. Let me just read a couple of the questions that we've had come in, and they definitely fall along some of the points you've mentioned. But just to read, I'm going to read some questions that were emailed in beforehand on the form. In addition, if anybody who is participating here wants to put some questions into the Q&A, you could do so as well. So here's one question. I guess it's more COVID related, but I believe this is a common thing.
Yes. Yep.
So the question is, with a shorter school schedule here in Atlanta, I'm reading it verbatim, word for word, constant class closures and quarantine, my husband has had to pitch in more than ever before. This leaves him with little time for work, and it has become a big financial strain and a strain on our family and marriage. Help.
So I'm not sure where the strain is exactly. For example, the kids are home and you need more help because of that. So your husband is able to work fewer hours, but then the family is suffering financially. So I'm wondering, it all depends. Everybody's in a different situation with the ages of the kids that are being looked after. But sometimes we are expecting to be able to carry on during the pandemic as if we're not having a pandemic, as if life is normal. And we expect, let's say a woman could expect that her children are going to be entertained to the hilt and supervised to the hilt and educated to the hilt. She won't be able to do it all by herself because each one has different needs and there's different schedules. And so she enlists the help of her husband because she can't imagine the children not receiving every one of their needs as they should. It's not even an option for her. But obviously, the financial support of the family is so important. You're outlining the stress and the strain of not having that. So it can be, I don't know what the ages and the situation are, but it could be that maybe the children aren't going to get everything the way they got it before. Maybe their homework won't be so supervised. Maybe they will lose some academic progress this year. Maybe they're going to have to catch up next year when school starts again in a more normal way, or in 2 years, whatever that is. Maybe they're not going to be, you want them safe and you want them, whatever the basic needs met, you're going to feed them and all that stuff. But I have heard many people talk about the guilt they feel in not being able to provide everything for their kids. But maybe we can't. And still eat, okay, or still be normal, still sleep, still have energy to function ourselves. So I'm just wondering, partly like that. And it could be that isn't the question. Maybe you're just at basic survival and the husband has to participate just for basic survival, not for the frills. And the money just isn't there. So then it's a matter of compassion and understanding that both of you, understanding that it's Hashem who put you into this situation where you have children that need to be looked after. There is no option but to look after them. And finances, it's not going to work exactly. And you may have to make, sacrifices and compromises. And that's the pandemic element of it, and supporting each other and encouraging each other and loving each other through it. That's what Hashem wants to see, not us fighting about it. It's nobody's fault, obviously. So, not simple to answer this in this format, but take it as a spiritual test, from Hashem to see what does he want from you. But for sure, he wants shalom bayis. Okay, he wants you to still be kind to each other despite this outside pressure.
So I'm just to recap, two approaches here, depending on the issue. One approach is to accept the fact that not everything is going to get done, and that will reduce some of the stress on the tasks that are at hand and allow more time for working, I guess, if necessary. And the second approach is if that's not where it's at, if it's just basic survival, if it's just getting the getting food together, and so then you can't cut away anything. But you have to learn to accept and to appreciate the challenge, I guess. Okay, so thank you for that. Let's go to another question here. Okay. When my husband is in a bad mood, work, stressed, finances, etc., I immediately take it personally. This is because he doesn't always say what's bothering him. And then I interpret his behavior, and that puts me in a bad mood because I take it personally, assuming I've done something to cause this bad mood. Any advice on not doing this and instead finding a way to be supportive without being oversensitive? Thank you.
Nothing that 10 years of therapy wouldn't fix. Because, you want to have the confidence that you're lovable and you're a good person. Maybe Rabbi Twersky, who just passed away, wrote a book on self-esteem, like to really remind yourself of your value and to ask yourself, am I doing something annoying here? If I'm doing something annoying, I can stop it, right? But if you're not, other people's mood is not our responsibility. Even if we were doing something, our mood, as I said at the beginning, is our own responsibility. We need to be happy. So, yes, we're tired and overworked and undernourished on every level here, except for food maybe, but like our social needs, our emotional needs, our needs for fresh air, exercise, the basics, whatever, we're not getting what we need. So we have to find other ways to supplement things. And we cannot just say, well, work is hard, so I'm grumpy. And in other words, your husband's mood is his responsibility. And unless you know that you're doing something, like you're being not nice to him, so if that was the case, then fix that up. But if you're not, then you might even make suggestions of, techniques that he could use, or offer him, some herbal teas that you found, or, mood elevating, or, try and take care of him with the, sage. Sage has a company that makes little roll-on essential oils for stress. One's called Stress Release. It's called Stress Release. That's what it is. It's a little roll-on thing you put on your neck or wherever you want. And it just makes you feel less stressed, like maybe you do a little research and then get him a little gift. Honey, does it make you smell nice, and make you feel nice? And, so you can try and help, but you have got the work ahead of you of self-love. That's what you need to work on, so that you can, not take responsibility for his poor stress management skills.
Mm-hmm. Right. And obviously in this forum, we're not addressing him. I guess that would be the first step, is for him to be more communicative and to express why it is that he's feeling down, or to try to ensure that his facial expressions and his mode of communication doesn't give off that vibe. So maybe that would be.
Well, our face is a Meshusa Rubim, a public wayfarer, and we need to realize that if you're living at home and you're depressed, or stressed or strained or anxious out of your mind or whatever, you are impacting everybody in your house. So you have a responsibility to put yourself in as good a state as possible, because it's not just your personal business unless you're living all by yourself. So, yeah.
Okay, here's another question. I'll read it again. I feel stuck. I need more emotional attention from my spouse, but they get defensive or turn off even more when I raise the issue.
Well, raising issues isn't the best way to fix anybody's behavior, children or spouses. It's better to use the positive reinforcement method of, when you're getting a little tiny bit of what you want from your spouse, to make a big deal out of it. So if your spouse happens to be sitting with you at dinner and eating, and you tell some story and your spouse makes a little grunt, like, oh, and you go like, oh, you're so right. That's what I really like. I love talking to you, because it helps me to really understand what I just said myself. Yeah, thanks, honey. And all the guy did was like, you're picking up a thread of the positive thing that you're looking for. I need more connection. I need more listening. I need more attention, And this is a bit of an exaggerated example. I'm just making fun here. But the idea is, when you're getting a little bit of something good, show a lot of pleasure. That's always better than raising the issue. If you have to raise the issue, it falls into your 5%. So, because it's never, people don't want to hear our issues. It's always when our issues are like, you need to shape up, like it's never going to be good news for them. But we can do the least damage by keeping it short and sweet, using the Harville Hendricks little formula. Honey, when you go do all your things in the evening and in your separate room, and I'm alone, I feel really lonely, and lonely for you. What I really want is to spend just a few quality minutes with you every night. Like maybe let's play a game or something, like, backgammon, just like, 20 minutes a night. I would just love that. If you have to raise it, then raise it that way. Not like, this marriage is the pits, talking negatively about it. Like, this is no way to live, like, we have to be very careful how we raise our issues. So
your advice in this case, when the person is seeking more emotional attention, perhaps seeking some positive compliments or something like that, would be to try to avoid directly speaking about it, saying honey or
In
whatever.
general, if you can find a bit of what you want and start fanning that with positive reinforcement, people go from strength to strength much more easily than they correct what's weak in them. Okay, like it's when anything you do that it feels successful, we want to do more of. Anything that you do that feels like you're failing, you actually want to do less of. So in general, always start with trying to find how your spouse is already doing a bit of the right thing and give that a lot of positive attention. That may be enough to get more of that going. If it isn't, and you have to speak about it, then we speak about it using a skilled skill set, okay? Not just spilling out like my frustration here.
Okay, very good. Another question. I'll read it. Thank you for addressing our community. Thank you. And with that, thank you. I also want to thank our sponsor for this evening. I forgot to mention earlier in the class, but this is as good a time. That is Faith Cohen, is sponsoring this class in honor of her family, and I know that she expressed to me as I mentioned to you that she's gotten a lot from your writings over the years, and so she's sponsoring this class both, I guess, in your honor, even more in the honor of her family, and the where they are thanks to your guidance. So thank you very much, Faith, and may you continue to see shalom bayis, nachas from your children, all good things. So the next question is, as I started, thank you for addressing our community. My husband and I have very, very different opinions with regards to child raising. COVID has just made things worse. We've tried communicating, but always ends up in a fight. Any suggestions?
If we have a few more minutes, we're going to finish maybe 5 more minutes, or a few more communication skills. But yes, people who are not skilled will find that they start talking, and then it's a bit of a competition to get our own point made. Instead of highlighting the listening part, which makes it feel like a conversation, we highlight the talking part, which makes it feel like a war. Okay, so we don't, it's not just that you disagree. It's that you can't understand each other or appreciate each other's point of view when you're selling your own point of view. I don't know what you two are doing, but that's one of the most common problems. Like let's say the father, just for example, doesn't believe that the kids should be disciplined and they should go to bed whenever they want to, and love is everything. Whereas the mother thinks, hey, the kids need some guidance and they need some limits, and they're going to be unhealthy if they don't have it. Let's say that was the debate, just for example. Just saying our point of view over and over and over again frustrates us. So we tend to get louder and harsher as we say it, and that's what we call a fight. Okay? Instead of having a way of getting closer and understanding each other and trying to merge the strengths of each of our positions, we're getting further away from each other. Plus, we miss the main goal of marriage, which is to marry two different people and their two different worlds, and to merge them, and to marry ideas, and to find, the truth and the best in each of our perspectives, to make our partner happy by trying to do what our partner needs done. So, you don't like it when I raise my voice at the kids. Which I really understand, because maybe you come from some abusive background or whatever, and all you want to give your kids was love. You didn't want them to experience what you did, and I understand that. On the other hand, I really need some order and structure. My house was chaotic in a different way. My parents didn't care if we ever did homework. This isn't okay for me. I want my children to know we care. I want them to have bedtimes and meal times and homework times. And so two people who are trying to help each other will go okay, I'm going to get those times going, but I'm going to do it without raising my voice, so that won't upset you. And you're right about that. We don't need to have raised voices. And he says, okay, and I'm going to cooperate with you. If we do it in a loving way to get them into bed. So, yeah, the stories, the bedtime routine, the love, the kisses, the hugs, it can be really lovey-dovey, and we're trying to merge. Our goal has to be on that, not to prove that we have the right way to live. We don't have the right way. We have the way we have. That's all we have. Okay.
Okay, thank you for that. Any final remarks or comments? You said you wanted to get back to something about communication.
Just that our natural tendencies are never good in parenting or marriage for some reason, the way, or maybe in life altogether. And that we should expect, that's just like, if we want to be really good at business, there's some things we may have to learn. We take some courses, we study some books, we see how the other greats did it. We don't invent the wheel ourselves. Like we try to learn from the wisdom that is available. Torah has tremendous amount of wisdom on communication skills, on love, on marriage, parenting, so much there. And even, some good secular psychology sources and courses, whatever it is, can help us develop the skill set. So there's a way, there's a lot of books on fair fighting, for example, that make so much sense. Or my books on marriage, I've got like Ezer Kenegdo, Harmony at Home, Make Yourself at Home. These all have great sections on marriage that have little tools that we can just, like, let's not be afraid to learn and to study and to grow. This is also one of the reasons I put out, I don't know if your community is familiar with my daily parenting posts, which go to email, and they're like 2 or 3 sentences long about personal stress, marriage, and parenting. But like read, if you can't read a book, read the posts. They're 2 sentences. Everybody can do that. Can sign up for those at dailyparentingpost.com and just get them in your email 4 times a week, at 7 a.m. just to start your day with a thought. Like, be prepared to study and to do better, because our instincts are really the opposite of what we need for successful family life. Hashem made it a project that we have to work on. So that's it.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for providing us the guidance to continue working on that project. As I mentioned at the start, this time of year, really all of life is about improving. And I commend our community for rallying behind these weeks of seeking to improve and to come together in a meaningful way. So thank you very much for your time this evening and for your guidance.
Thank you for having me. Yes, thank you.
Thank you to our sponsor, to the Cohen family, and thank you to all of you for joining. Have a wonderful week. Stay in touch.